Good evening. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this edition of Turnaround Marriage Live. We're Scott and Rachel. We're so excited to share with you a conversation that I had with my doctor recently. And the reason why, and we'll get to that in a minute, is I know that this is going to hit close to home with anybody out there tonight that's realizing that their marriage has not been what they'd hoped it would be. And they're also really feeling the stress of that. And it might have even started to look like headaches and walking on pins and needles when you're walking in your house. It might even start to be feeling like anxiety or even depression, whatever it might be. And if that's you, this is exactly the place that you need to be tonight.
Yes. Welcome, everybody. We are Scott and Rachel. We do help committed Christian couples finally end the cycles of conflict and disconnection and reclaim the love, passion, and playfulness that they once had. So if you're watching on Facebook, give us a hello. Tell us that you're watching. Give us a thumbs up. If you're watching on YouTube, go ahead and hit that bell and you can subscribe and not miss any of our content. We are here to encourage and equip your Christian marriage. And a caveat on this particular video and any other video, anything that we share is for informational purposes only. It's not to be construed as medical advice. So with that caveat out of the way, we wanted to connect some dots for you about this conversation that Scott had with our favorite doctor in town, Dr. Brett Spradlin.
Yeah, Dr. Brett and I were having lunch together. Who does that with their doctor?
Yeah.
I was really careful what I ordered, by the way. But anyway, Dr. Brett's awesome. And one of the things he taught us both, and it was, to be fair, it was a number of conversations, was he talks about the Stress Trilogy that people have. And it's really 3 ways to kill people. And it's
which sounds crazy.
It sounds crazy. I get it.
3 ways you will die.
But there's absolutely like structural stress that comes. You know, it can look like trauma. It can look like, being in a car accident. Obviously, that's one way that can kill you. But there's also chemical stress that can come, and external things, and even chemicals that get in the body, and all the cumulative effect of all the things that we're putting in that are unhealthy. Mm-hmm. But then there's also the emotional. There's that emotional stress point that is really the intangible of depression. It really is the intangible of the anxiety, the ongoing stress that might happen at home. It might happen at your work, wherever it would be. Mm-hmm. And as we were talking, one of the things that really stood out to me is, oh my goodness, of course. And it was true for us as well. When a marriage is struggling, there is emotional stress. Sometimes it's massive. Sometimes it's flowing over into headaches, and it's looking like migraines. Those are horrible. I've had those in the past. It could look like all kinds of different things.
Panic attacks.
Absolutely.
Stomach aches, high blood pressure, all of those kinds of things. When there's stress in the home, your body secretes cortisol, the stress hormone, and it wreaks havoc. It causes inflammation throughout your body. And there is taking a physical toll on your physical body. Yeah. And so, as you were having that conversation with Dr. Brett, it was very interesting to kind of tie the pieces together terms of this stress trilogy, whether it's structural or chemical or emotional. If the marriage is struggling, you can fix the other pieces, but here's this emotional stress. What do you do with it? You have got to handle the root problem, right? Which is fixing the marriage, if that's in fact where that stress is coming from.
Right. And we absolutely. And when we look back on our own story, for me, I realized that there was stress in my body, but I just thought it was all these other factors. I mean, I should have put those pieces together. I didn't see it at the time. And it more so felt like, instead of my marriage is out of whack and this needs to get fixed, it felt more so like the world was against me and all these things kept happening and you weren't on my side about them. And it was just driving a wedge between us. And it was really that I didn't understand what was going on. And so when I realized that, talking with him, but also it was really an eye-opening over a course of time, realizing that this had every impact on my health, this relationship.
Yes.
And so as we were talking and I was sharing a little bit about what we do, it just really went off like a big bright light. Mm-hmm. Anyone whose marriage is struggling is probably going to be having some measure of stress at home.
Oh, yeah.
It's going to be some measure of it. And it's going to be high blood pressure. It's going to be aches and pains, back pain, whatever it would be. It is actually stress within the body. It might not have come from a car accident, but it's still stress on the body. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are sick because of this.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
and it hit me when a marriage is struggling, everything else is out of whack too.
Yeah.
Like, how could I couldn't pastor well, and I know other people, they can't show up to work well, they can't show up as mom and dad the way they'd want to, they're not showing up in their family, they're not showing up in their friendships, they're certainly not showing up in their church the way they'd want to. And when that's out of whack and the marriage is out of whack, then the flood of the stress comes.
Mm, yeah. And stress, many of you know stress has a direct impact on your immune system and your immune functioning. And so if you've been getting sick more lately, if you've been coming down with every little sniffle that comes on, if you maybe got sick with COVID and stayed sick for a long time or whatever, this could very well be impacted. If your marriage is out of whack, that stress could be weakening your immune system. And guys, the interesting thing is that it's like, if you look at traditional Western medicine, you look at traditional mental health care in the USA, it's so much about, let's compartmentalize, let's give you a pill for your heart, let's give you a pill for your brain, let's give you a pill for your kidney, let's
Right.
let's fix all these separate pieces. When again, if you're putting these types of things in your body to fix an organ or a system without taking care of the root
Right.
problem, which could be the chemical stress, right? What you're eating, the food, the water, the air that you're breathing. If all of that is polluted, we live on this polluted planet. We're constantly bombarded with toxins. If our body is weakening, and then everything else is also weakening because of the stress in a marriage, it can have such an impact on our body. And so the interesting thing about what we do with a holistic approach to approaching marriage is we really help you reconnect your body, your heart, your mind, and your
Right.
soul. Because for so long, we've tried to compartmentalize and say, oh, I need to take care of my mental health. But as if your physical health has no impact
Right.
on your brain. Your
Right.
brain is an organ.
Right.
And your mind is that electrical field around your brain. And when we can understand that we can get control of not only what we're putting in our body, but we can have control over how we're thinking and seeing the world. When we can start to think about how we think, we can start to regulate how we feel, we can start to nourish our body so that and nourish our soul and nourish our marriage in a more holistic way. This is literally the approach that we take with our clients, because
Right.
we understand that you cannot just quote fix a marriage without also addressing how you're thinking, how your
Right.
walk with the Lord is. What are you eating? Are you moving? Are you taking care of this physical temple that God gave you?
Right.
Because
They're all interrelated.
they absolutely are.
Yeah.
They absolutely are. And we had to learn this kind of the hard way
It's
when
true.
our health, just really fell apart.
But as we're talking with him, and you've had some conversation, well, he's your doctor too,
Yeah.
It became very, very clear, like what we're doing in addressing all those areas is so spot on, because we don't live in a vacuum. We don't.
Right.
And one thing is always affecting the other. And yes, we're going to look at the kids reacting to us and not behaving the way that we would want them to, or they're lashing out and we're pointing the fingers and we're saying it's them. But really, we know in the heart of heart that it's the root cause is probably not them. It's probably the marriage. It probably is. Jesus said to be, or the Genesis says to be fruitful and multiply. And the root core, the root most important thing, the vine is the marriage, and the kids are the fruit of it. And so if this is out of whack, of course, the kids are going to be out of whack too. So this is the heart of it, though. If the marriage is out of whack, there is a spiritual upheaval.
Mm-hmm.
There is a spiritual upheaval that is going on. You cannot be right with God when you are not showing up. Well, I guess you could be. Got to be careful here. Most of the time, when things are not right here, you are in a place where you are blaming the other person. You're not owning your own mistakes and sins and failings, and you cannot show up in any aspect of life when this is out of whack. And so there is a spiritual upheaval that causes also the stresses chemically, emotionally, and maybe even other times beyond that, physically, structurally. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's so true, Scott, and it's so good. And you know, in this compartmentalized world, we tend to go, well, I'm going to just go to work and I'm just going to really, focus at work and leave home at home and go to work. And how many times can we really actually, are we able to do that when there's that underlying feeling of, oh, yuck, 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 I have to go home. What am I going to do? Are we going to be walking on pins and needles now? How is this going to play out? At the same time, we can be like, well, I'll just be a really good dad. I can be a really good dad. It's like, how are you going to be a really good dad when you're not going to love that kid's mom,
Yeah.
the way that Christ has instructed you to. And so, and going back to that whole piece of the way that the chemical stresses affect our bodies, and they affect the way we think too. And so it's like, if we're stressed at home in the marriage, most likely we're not going to be taking care of our temple. We're either going to be over exercising and using that as like a numbing, right? Or we're going to be overeating, or we're going to be drinking too much, or we're going to be using something to numb ourselves. That's probably not going to be really good for our body. We tend to go to the comfort foods, which are very inflammatory, when that's
Right.
the main thing that you're eating when you're stressed out. And so it's a vicious cycle then, when the marriage is, if we're not addressing this at home, what's going on, then we tend to make everything else worse. We need a pill for this now. Now we're going to eat this. Now we're going to try to, de-stress by drinking this. And, it's like, then we're not taking care of the temple that God gave us. And we're also not nourishing the very foundational piece of what God gave us, our marriage and our home. And so if that's you, if you feel like your health's falling apart, if you feel like your mind, you're like, I can't even concentrate. I'm having panic attacks. I can't, I'm in this fog, or if I'm just disconnected, the Lord feels so far away. My prayers feel like they're bouncing. Maybe you need to come back to center. Maybe you need to reincorporate your body, mind, heart, and soul. Maybe you need some outside support, right?
It's so true. And, one of our clients right now, Joe, he said, one of his struggles, he was bringing work home. And he said he doesn't do that anymore. And one of the reasons is his wife is putting notes in his bag, and he's, wanting to come home. And it's like, you're able to leave it at home because the marriage is getting in alignment. And it's like things start to fall in place. Yeah. When you get this piece in place.
Yeah.
And Dr. Brett has helped us in so many ways. My knees, my goodness, I can go hiking again. I mean, my teeth, he could go on and on with nutrition, so many pieces that he's been able to put into place. And I think it's so key that what we're saying today is that we are holistic beings. We are to love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Yeah. And we are to do the same with our neighbor, to love them as yourself with your heart, soul, mind, and strength. And who is your first neighbor? But the person that God brought to you to be your spouse. And so that's why it really, really matters that we get things in alignment with God's priorities. Yes, God first, but this second, this, not kids, not anything else, this right here.
And it can feel very overwhelming if you're like, oh my gosh, so now I have to clean up my diet, and now I have to have to do all these things. It's like, that's probably when you need some outside support. It's like, you don't have to make everything perfect, but making some changes in the right direction in each of these areas, and trying to come back as a whole person, one who can think the way that God intends us to think, right? To have the mind of Christ, to really mind the way we think, to be able to regulate our heart and not let our emotions lead the way and lead us astray, but really to be able to regulate and choose joy, right? To be able to take care of our temple, to be able to nourish our soul and really connect with our Creator, connect with others, especially our spouse, and also connect with His creation. It's like, this is what we were made for.
Yep.
This is what we were made for. And this is what we do with our transformational Christian marriage coaching. And so, if you're out there and you've been trying to put together the pieces in your health, but there's still something that's missing, or the stress at home is really just hitting a ceiling in your health, we want you to reach out. We want you to book a call with us. You can go to turnaroundmarriage.com/call and pick a time that works, fill out that short questionnaire, and let us best serve you on that call to see, what's not working and what is working in your marriage, and what do you really hope and dream and pray that it could be. Right. And we'll help you create a strategy to get there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So
Dr. Brett has a lot of great things he's taught us, and to help us get things in alignment with our health. And the main thing he taught me is that when we get things in alignment in relationships, with the right priorities, the way that God's designed them, everything else begins to fall in place. And this actually has every effect on your health as well. So I hope that encourages you, because it absolutely helps us to understand the priorities the way that God designed them to be. So,
yep. So,
all
yeah,
right.
you can find us and book that call at turnaroundmarriage.com/call. Until next time, we'll see you then.